than common knowledge. So that's not very meaningful when you go to court against these associations, and that's why we're doing this. So the research approaches are spatially, what's the extent of the problem, and that's why we try to enlist volunteers at the trailheads to where GPS transmitters, they have no identifying information other than we know that was on the snow machine and where it went, so it tracked and gave us a route. But as far as other identifiable information for individuals, that wasn't part of it. So what's the extent of the problem? Behavioral. So we started looking at the biology and the ecology of the wolverines to see how that activity is stressing them and their response in denning and movements and things like that to the human presence. And that goes back to the change in their birth rates. What we're trying to build right now is a baseline, and it's kind of difficult because we're behind the power curve. We've still got very coincidental activities, wolverines and snow machines, but we're still getting a baseline as far as the birth rates and how that's going to change with the increase or the continued activities of people winter recreating. So the first phase was to determine if the spatial overlap at regional scales is occurring, and this study covers the Payette, Boise, and the Sawtooth over the last, well, since 2008. But there are studies in Washington and Oregon on some of these chunks of habitat. Montana I think is doing some studies. So it's not just Idaho, this central Idaho area. There are studies ongoing that are related to what we're doing here. 2009, we started doing aerial surveys on a grid to kind of see where the winter recreation is occurring, and you can also spot wolverine tracks. We have people that are skilled enough to tell what the tracks are doing aerial surveys. So you're getting a little bit of presence of the wolverine without collaring them, but you're also getting the occurrence of winter recreation at the same time. And then they built the model for this persistent snow and based the habitat on that. And this is the persistent snow, this light blue here. So you can see it, we've got some pretty good corridors, pretty consistent habitat throughout this whole area based on that persistent snow area. This is the grid that we flew the first year, and pretty extensive. So we got some good data out of that to base where we're going to do our trapping and look at our winter rec at the same time. Phase 2 is within the area overlap. So what we were interested in, back to basics, we were interested in finding out how winter recreation affects the wolverines that are there. So once we get enough data, we'll be able to assess the potential response of the wolverines to these human activities, and we need a lot of data to do that. High quality location timing data on wolverines, as well as the snow machiners and backcountry skiers. Some of the methods we use and are still using is GPS collaring of the resident animals. So we trap them, put a GPS collar on. we've also, since we started, we've also mixed in, when we don't run traps, this year we did not run traps and collar on the payette. What we did though is build some camera stations, and those are placed right next to the trap because the Wolverine's familiar with, you know, the reward system there. But instead of trapping them, we hung bait in the air above a stand, so they climb up a tree, walk out this stand, a walkway they call it. And then it has this apparatus with gun brushes to snag hair. And to get to the bait, they have a bar across the contraption where they stand up and try and get it. And then the camera was just opposite that. So what that gave us is the identifying feature of a Wolverine is this, we call it a fingerprint. These markings on the chest and neck are very characteristic of individual animals. So the camera trap stations, theoretically, were designed to get a picture of this so we could tell what animal that was. And when we trap them and collar them, we take pictures, we have this documented. So we know the animals in their fingerprint, basically.
Rob, you switched to that because, was it a cost thing because you having to fly out to those sites? You know, how you were doing it in the past, you had to immediately respond to the animal being trapped or?
Yeah, I'm not sure why the designers of the project did some of that. I think a lot of it had to do with the cost of trapping. It's very cost intensive compared to the camera traps. I think that played a part. I'm not sure about the impact of the animal and how much that played a part in that. But basically it's a cheaper way of telling what animals are coming to that trap again. A way of keeping track of who's still around. And then for the recreationists, we had these small GPS loggers that only gave you a GPS location, like I said before. It doesn't identify the wearer or anything. They're on elastic band, and that's very important when you're on trailhead and asking somebody, can you take this out on your ride today? Because if you don't explain to them that it has no identifying features to it, they'll go, well, now the government's spying on me. But anyway, it's on an armband. They just wear it over their jacket on their arm, and it resulted in some really good data on where the recreationists were going. And this study area is central Idaho, of course. The three forests is what we covered. 2009, I think we started trapping here in that study area I showed you earlier. That's this northern one. The following years, we pretty much moved down into the Boise, up in the Warm Lake area. We had traps up there. The third year, they went over the mountains to the Stanley area. And then the fourth year, they went down to Fairfield. So it covers that whole, yeah. And when we weren't trapping up here, we had the camera traps going. So we could keep track of the individuals that we had GPS tracks on previously.
So how long do you figure this study's gonna be going on?
Well, scientifically, for the data, the longer the better. More data is better than less. A lot depends on the money, you know, and the cooperators, how much they want to put into it.
So you just plan to have it ongoing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Until we can't get any support for it.
Well, what's the life expectancy on those GPS collars, on the batteries or whatever?
They will usually, they put a fabric link in there that usually rots.
Oh, so they're designed to fall off?
Yeah. And some of them, I think, the earlier ones they used were not designed to fall off, so they have to trap them at the end of the season and remove the collars. I've been out tracking wolverines in the summer to recover collars. And, you know, you can find the collar easy, whether it's on the animal or not.
And they're designed to fall off, so you're getting about a year's worth of data off of one?
Usually winters,
At Winters Wood?
yeah. And when we trapped and collared, we were doing it pre-denning, and then things went quiet, we left them alone when they set up dens and had their kits and stuff. And then after the kits were out and about with the adults, then we tried to trap the adults or locate the fallen, the drought collars. So we tried to avoid the denning season.
To the collars that they put on, are they just around the neck? I noticed, like this guy. Pretty sturdy neck.
Yeah,
The neck is
they'll
pretty
be a.
thick and the skull isn't that big. Have they ever had trouble setting them off?
Yeah, well, that's when you're putting the collar on, the animal's anesthetized. So if you don't get the right tension, or you don't want it too tight, but you don't want it too loose, because we've lost collars before that way. But it's usually just a small transfer that hangs under the neck, and then about an inch wide band that attaches it to the animal. And I don't have one, or I should get that, just to show people. So this is the first year, 2010, was I think I said 2009. 2010 is when we started trapping in this Payette National Forest area. That was from January to April. And then we went over to the Boise, this area here. And then we started doing bait stations on the sawtooth. That's to get them coming to where we want to build the traps. And then 2012 we started doing some other areas, that Fairfield area. So it kind of progressed, and now it's in a steady rotation where we trap. Winter before this one, we trapped on the Payette and got some more data from the collars. This year we did only camera traps, trying to keep current on their location and which animals are still out and about. And that's, that's an assumption you make if you get nothing for a couple of years on an individual animal. It's a good chance that animal's probably either moved or died. We did have one from the Sawtooth area that was collared, that made a journey all the way up to the Payette National Forest. And it had a collar on it so we could see its route, and it was amazing. In one winter, it moved that far. So it may have been, I don't remember the specifics on this animal, but it may have been a disperser. So, you get certain concentrations in some areas. The habitat's full, carrying capacity is full. So a juvenile will have to move, trying to find another location. And we suspect that's what that one was doing, just relocating.
And what's the life expectancy?
Depends on the quality of habitat. We have, and I forget her name, we had one female that the winter before this one that we trapped. And it was surprising because her teeth, some of her teeth were missing. They were all worn down and discolored. She was missing a toe, but she was very feisty and in good shape. So it kind of depends. Give or take 10 years, depending, in captivity, of course, they live longer than that. So the monitoring for the winter rec users, we went to the major trailheads, the portals where these snow machiners unload and take off. And we had people sensing, talking to people, asking if they volunteered to work where the data logger, explaining to them that no, it's not us spying on you. And surprisingly, we got a lot of takers, which is really good for the data that we wanted to collect. We also did aerial surveys, and not so much because those are very costly. But in addition to the data loggers that the snow machiners would use, we had trail counters that we hit on trees at certain trail locations, and it would count passes. And then we divided that by 2 and got, 1 day's use out of that. So the biggest portion of volunteers were the snow machiners, but we did backcountry skiers, the cat skis and heli skiers. Heli skiers were like that because we don't do much of that up here. We had a little bit, but not much. And the cat skis, skiers, I think Brundage operates out of there doing that. So these were relatively few compared to the snowmobilers, especially, and then the backcountry skiers. You got a lot of backcountry skiers in this area that strap their skis to a snow machine and they go out, park their sled and ski. So we got them, as many of them as we could, to volunteer to wear one of these data loggers, and it turned out to give us a lot of good data. So 80–90% of the people approached agreed to carry one, which is
Amazing.
And that was not a favorite activity of our volunteers or employees to go out and solicit these people, because sometimes you would get abuse. Government depends on the people that you and how you approach them. But this is excellent, 80–90%. They did a great job, and I've got to commend them for that, because it's not somebody's favorite activity to solicit the public like that. So over 75% returned. I mean, I'm sure some just said, oh, sure, and took it off and tossed it. To induce the people to return the data loggers after they get back in from their ride. We had businesses help. Some of these are all the businesses in town that would give them a free beer or cut on lunch or dinner. And so we tried to incentivize them to return that logger. So they had baskets in these businesses, and they just, oh yeah. And then they'd show them, get their free beer or whatever. We had 714 tracks in 2010, 1,025 or 27 tracks in 2011. So as the word got out, we got better data. I'm not sure what they are currently. I don't know what the rates are currently since 2010 and 11, but it's pretty comparable to what we've been getting. Maybe even increasing. I've never looked at that data as far as how many tracks we got from the winter rec users, but it may even be increasing due to the increase of popularity of this area. Okay, this is kind of an aerial of the study area, and that would be down here, not quite the area down east of southeast of McCall, but this is pretty much the area. And when you're looking at geographical regions or landscapes, it's not really that big. So that kind of amazed me that we had the number of animals that we did when we started looking at this area. So this is, I'm going to cover some slides with some of the recreation tracks that we got from people. And I'll just go through these slides, and you can see we started accumulating tracks. And that's one individual, one day.
Each separate color is a separate rider?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is pretty readable, but as we collected data,
Oh my gosh.
this is a very heavily used area. The town, I think, the economy of
That's
this
still
town.
one day.
No, this is a log for